Welcome to Ukraine Updates, where Russian propaganda gets wrecked, fascists get roasted, and freedom gets the last word. Hope your week's been better than Ukraine's diplomatic support, because Washington's tired and restless from all these peace talks they're barely participating in. And if you're still wondering what this administration has actually done to help Ukraine, same. Turns out, blaming the victim for getting invaded, extorting them, and slobbering over Putin's you-know-what is how you stop the threat of World War III. Meanwhile, Americans are celebrating Easter. Some even dyed eggs made of potatoes. Because nothing says, welcome to the new golden age, like pretending starch is poultry while we slide into recession. I'm Slavie. Thanks so much for being here. Thanks for spending your Easter weekend with us. Let's say hello to our host today, Annette. How are you doing?
Hi, Slavie. I'm so happy to be here. And thanks for everyone for tuning in to us today. I am filling in for Mr. Dawson. He actually had a surprise this morning. A bunch of trucks came into his complex and they pulled out all sorts of fun Easter entertainment for the kids. So, of course, everybody knows he has Felix, and Felix saw this out the window, and of course they had to go. So he'll be in and out a little bit to help us with some visuals, but we have a great panel today. Yana from Project Constantine is back with us. Yay! And of course, we have Claire from Car for Ukraine and Commander McMillan. We might have some people popping in a little bit later on. So we're going to start with an update from Yana with Project Constantine because she hasn't been here for a while.
Yeah, so nice to be back. Since you last saw me, I've been to Ukraine. I'm back in Joburg, as you guys can see. Met up with the 67th, the 42nd. And yeah, we just continue to work and push on with our work for Project Constantine. We are fundraising. We actually got like this really cool anti-drone gun for Viper's unit, but it launches a net. And I remember I was on the show and like here on the Shills, and someone was putting a super chat about it on like, isn't something like this possible? And I was like, I know this thing is going on in development, but I couldn't say anything. And now it's out there. So Viper's guys have it. Yeah.
That's awesome. Are you, what other type of equipment are you fundraising for?
So we have obviously that, we have drones, and then vehicles continue to be a big thing. I mean, Claire knows it continues to be a big thing. And also medical equipment that's also been asked for now, because a lot of the people who we knew in the 67 are moving on to other brigades. And we're like, we'll continue to support the 67, but we want to also support these people who we've worked with for so long, and they need things. So we're also getting medical supplies like IFACs and tourniquets and all of that. Yeah.
That's awesome. I'm so happy to hear that you guys are doing well and you're doing such a great job continuing on with Project Constantine. That's wonderful. So let's go to Claire for an update with for Car for Ukraine.
So Car for Ukraine, so as you know, we're in the middle of our Easter Pasenki fundraising campaign that the Shills are part of. I'm just opening the page to see where we got to because it's only dawn here, so I haven't seen the figures overnight. But it's looking promising that we've passed our halfway mark, which is, $110,000. We're over that. So that means we've got 11 trucks in the campaign that we've paid for, and we're going well, I think. It's been a really interesting campaign. Whereas at Christmas, everybody knew when Christmas was, right? So we all started at about the same time. But this one, because between Christmas and now, people had started a whole lot of other projects. I mean, all the various channels and ex-personalities and other characters that help our campaigns. Some of them had started other campaigns in the meantime, so they weren't able to all start at the same time for the Easter campaign. So it's been a very interesting process, because we've got Ukraine Matters has finished their campaign for their big truck for that unit, and we've only just got Jonathan Pierce from ATP Geopolitics only just started, and War Translated only just started this week. So they're only just starting down in baby steps, and those two will definitely go zooming up to the top, because they're big, successful, they know what they're doing. So we've got Sukhamimus is going to finish his 2 trucks. Andrew Mercado's done his truck, but he's helping Chungus and Kanti Ludan with their fundraiser, because they're pretty much new starters, but they're going brilliantly. They're already up to over $7,000 for their truck, and they've got to raise 11. So they're going to definitely make the full truck. And is that like the full Monty? For them, it probably is. Do you know the full Monty in America?
Yes,
okay.
we do.
They might even go the full Monty, those two. But yeah, and various people coming in at different stages. We've also got a whole lot of new startup personalities that kind of haven't done fundraising before, or have only just started their channels, like Rudy, who I hope will join here today. He's got a brand new channel. We've got Baba Yaga, who I really had to grab in. He's just an ex-personality. I was hoping he might come today, but he's in a bit of another world, because he's not on YouTube. He's only on X, and he doesn't have a stack of followers, but he's got enough to raise, $2,000, which would contribute to one of the trucks. And I just had to grab him because of the name. I thought he was fully committed, and he is. And then we've got the Laser Pig. And who's heard of Laser Pig? This is another world to me, this YouTube, Twitch world, like the Soy Pill and Laser Pig. I really haven't got into Twitch, and these guys are kind of creative video makers, and the Laser Pig makes one video a month, but he's got 500,000 followers. He's really huge in that world, and everybody just waits for his video. So it'll be really interesting. He's coming in straight after Easter, so it'll really be interesting to see how we go with him. Hope he's watching here today. He said he's been keeping an eye on us while he was doing another project. And then we've got Little Soy Pill, who's like a new startup on Twitch and YouTube, and suddenly got really engaged in politics. And he is so interesting to follow, because it's a world I'm not sort of entrenched in, but it's very much for younger people, maybe under 20s. They do a lot of discussion. They do a lot of panels. They do a lot of discussion about masculinity and identity in the society. And but more recently, he's got into the Ukraine topic and other things. So very interesting group of people supporting this campaign. I'm really loving getting to know these new type of personalities. And as it was so exciting at Christmas when we first got to know, our base crowd, which is the Shills and Rick the Ukrainian and Sukhamimus and Mercado and people like that. But anyway, oh, hey, Rudy. I was just talking about you. You must have had your ears burnt.
It's wonderful that you're getting so many new channels and meeting new people. And what I'm thinking about that too is you're reaching a lot of demographics. That seems to be something that YouTubers, and social media, we get locked into one demographic, and you sound like you've got the whole range, which is great. You've got the younger ones, the more seasoned ones. So, kudos for that. So
that's part of the joy of hunting down people who are actually interested in doing this, and then supporting them through it. And I say to all of them, they have to come on the Shills, because the Shills is the nursery where you grow and learn technically, because Dick's there to help you technically with things. And it's such a great place to start, because it's very safe and very community here. And don't you find, Rudy? Very community on this show.
Yep.
So why
And,
don't we go? Oh, I'm sorry.
Sorry.
Let me go. Let's go over to Commander McMillan, and then Rudy will come to you for an update, and then Slavie's going to lead us on a few really important talking topics. Just a reminder, Shayna is on the team helping to drop links for the donations for both Project Constantine. There's a link tree for that, and then also the Car for Ukraine link. So, if you can go ahead and, open up your pocketbooks a little bit to help them again, that would be absolutely wonderful. I do want to shout out Petra Olsen here. She gave 269 Swedish krona. Thank you so much for your super chat, Petra. We just love you here. So, Commander, word of the day for you.
Word of the day, wainscoting. There. I've just been following the reports of what's going on at the front, and the thing that strikes me as interesting, if you look at the reports on International Institute for the Study of Warfare, Russian offensive operations continue in this sector. No advances reported. In this sector, no advances. Every one of them, almost without exception, is no advances reported. Conversely, the few places you see Ukrainian offensive operations gained, X amount of distance. So I think it's fair to say that at least right now, because we know the Russians are making preparations for a major offensive. So preparatory operations are probably going in right now, probing, finding weak spots for future operations that aren't really accomplishing much, which suggests that the offensive punch still remaining in the Russian military is quite limited. So I think that's good news in a lot of ways. We know that Putin has been talking about, he wanted, for example, an Easter ceasefire, and yet within hours of announcing that he wanted this, we get a barrage of missiles striking targets inside Ukraine. We also know that the Russians have said, specifically Putin said, he thinks that Trump needs to get out of the deal-making, trying to negotiate a ceasefire, armistice kind of arrangement, because it's evident that he doesn't know what he's doing. That suggests to me that there may be some sort of division developing between Putin and Trump. They've been, awfully buddy-buddy in the past, but the fact that that's going on, where he's making those kind of negative comments about Trump, and we know how sensitive Trump is to people telling him he's not the beloved God King from on high, that suggests to me that we're not going to see a lot of, direct pro-Russian stuff coming out of the White House. I'm not saying that they're going to stop trying to push policies that are at least favorable to Russia, but it's not directly trying to help Russia. I think it's more stuff that will be beneficial to Trump that incidentally helps the Kremlin.
But Commander, you know why Russia broke the ceasefire today, right?
Why?
It's because air defense wasn't wearing any suits.
Okay, you win.
We have a new guest that popped in, and Mr. Dawson's going to come and get him in online with us. In the meantime, Rudy, why don't you give us what's on the top of your mind, knowing we are going to go through these big topics together, but what's going on in your life?
Well, I just got back. That's why I was late. There was protests at the Capitol down here in Phoenix. So it was like 30-minute drive. So I just got back home from there, and it was there was a lot of people out there. So I'll definitely be making a video here soon. And there was some pretty funny props. Some people had some pretty funny props with them. So yeah, it was great. And I think they're going to keep on having these. So yeah, that's pretty much it.
What were the props, Ruby? Gotta share
Well,
with us.
that's what I'm going to say. There's some good ones in there. It is hilarious. So
I've seen some of the signs on social media, especially some of the grandmas. They're putting in some pretty spicy stuff. So
yeah, yeah, there's some really people got creative. I'll just put it that way.
I was asking, I don't know if anybody here knows who Adam Kinzinger is. He was actually in the January.
I love Adam Kinzinger.
Yes, and he was on the.
Sorry.
Welcome, Johnny. You don't know me.
Johnny's
I'm Nat. I'm actually on the shows. I do have my own stream, and occasionally I fill in for Ukraine Update. Dick actually had a surprise this morning. Big trucks were coming in, and he thought, oh no, they're going to dig up something, and my internet's going to go out. It turned out to be a big Easter surprise. So they had bouncy houses and all this stuff for the kids. And Dick has his son Felix, and Felix looked out the window and so they're out having fun with the Easter celebration. But I do have him on a quick thing here, so I can get to him right away if anything comes up. So, and welcome, and it's wonderful to meet you. I am usually in the chat running the teams, but it's so nice to be on here with you today. So, Slavie, what's the first news topic that you think we should discuss amongst the panel?
It was the ceasefire that Putin announced. And I actually didn't know that they already broke it. I think it was
40 minutes in. They broke it 40 minutes into the season. Yeah.
So, Jonathan, what's your take on that?
Wait, are you guys
Well,
talking?
that gives you a chance to rearm.
You guys are talking about the
Jonathan,
Easter ceasefire thing?
Sorry, have I missed a saying hello to JP? Hello, JP. How are you?
Let me get back to the news.
Sorry,
Oh, no mic yet. Oh God, we've got him shut up. How exciting! Let's talk about him.
Oh no, we can hear Jonathan.
we can
Oh,
hear him.
right, I started to worry.
Oh, yeah, there he is. There he is.
Oh.
Sorry.
I'm very well, Claire, and it's always a pleasure to see you and everyone else here, of course.
Yes.
So my views on the ceasefire is, if ever Putin is, and I've just come into the conversation, I missed what you've all said, so I came in the end of Commander Macmillan, is it,
Yes.
saying some stuff that I broadly agreed with, which is that Trump does what is to the benefit of Trump first and foremost, and if that's incidentally to the benefit of Russia, I think that is largely true. I also think he likes strong men, and he really wants a dictatorship at the moment. I think he wants more power, and he's swerving towards like greater and greater autocracy. So I think there are many alignments. Whether you would to say to Trump, do you want to do what Putin wants? I don't know that he would naturally say that, but I think these things align. But as far as the truce is concerned, anything that Putin calls for is to the benefit of Putin, right? So this is just, it's trivially true that this is just going to be something that Putin is useful for Putin. And it could be a trap. And again, I don't know if you said this, but it could be that if Ukraine have to break this, or it's because he called it straight away, everyone's like, okay, there's a truce. Like, it's going to be unrealistic that Ukraine can not break the truce, right? They're fighting. There are going to be different units fighting all up and down the front line. I just think he's setting up a trap for Ukraine to look the bad guys, which then puts Zelensky in a very difficult position, because if he then says, right, we're going to do the truce and be good boys, he's dancing to the tune of Putin. But if he said screw Putin, then it gives America or the US a chance to hit Ukraine with a stick. And so I think it's a very difficult position. I think Zelensky's saying we are going to adhere to it. That's the last I heard tonight. But I think it's going to be pretty much impossible for either side to adhere to it.
Yeah, when you've got troops in contact along the front line, there's always going to be some sort of level of shooting going on. I think the key is whether or not they're firing drones and missiles at one another, because that's on a national level as opposed to, individual platoon and company leaders. And as we pointed out, within 40 minutes of making the announcement that he was going to put this into effect, he'd already violated it by launching missile attacks.
Well, I mean, the question is, and I don't know the finer details. I know that Kherson was hit by drones, but I guess whether Russia can say that those things were launched, after or before the ceasefire, or after, there's something.
Drones took off 2 minutes before the announcement, so technically they're not in violation.
Exactly.
Yeah, it was supposed to start at 6 p.m. Ukrainian time and 6:40, but stuff hit.
Yeah.
I'm like,
So the
Cool, guys.
ceasefire was from 6 p.m. Saturday to midnight Sunday, and it was claiming that it was for humanitarian reasons.
Humanitarian propaganda, they're spelled very similarly. It's easy to get them mixed up.
Zelensky said that the ceasefire is a complete another propaganda move. Noted that Russian drone strikes had already continued into the supposed truths. So
I think the biggest frustration at the moment for me is just what Trump has done through Rubio in saying that. So before the election and after the election, Donald Trump was very, very explicit in saying that if Russia don't play ball, we'll hit them heavily with sanctions, and we'll give Ukraine as many weapons as we possibly can. And if Ukraine don't play ball, we will stop all aid to Ukraine, etc., etc. And what's happened is Ukraine has played ball completely, and they've had aid stopped to them. Russia have been not playing ball, and this entire time they've not been playing ball. Unfortunately, the US has done nothing and allowed Russia to do what it wants without coming back at Russia. And so he said, we're going to drop sanctions on Russia if they don't play ball. And now he's saying, if they don't play ball, we're going to walk away. So he was lying then, or he's just, I don't know. That really, really, really angers me, because he's going out of his way not to come down hard on Russia at every opportunity.
I think the key is that a lot of the pronouncements coming out of the Trump administration are being done because they know there's a considerably majority level of support for Ukraine in this country. So they have to make all these statements to ameliorate the actions that they're undertaking, which are essentially the 180 degrees off of what they're saying they're going to do.
But is it not also the case that, I mean, there was an interesting Guardian analysis piece today saying that the Trump administration lacks serious expertise. And I think that the fact that Trump came along,
the biggest clown car in the world.
But absolutely, but it started with Trump saying we can solve this in 24 hours, then coming to power and going, oh my God, this is way more complicated than I thought. No shit, Sherlock, this is a war, right? And so you've got a bunch of people like Steve Witkoff who are woefully inadequate to do the job. They are, you've got a golf playing billionaire real estate mogul sent to do negotiations with the former KGB dictator of the country, getting eaten alive. So there is a lack of expertise. There's a lack of understanding. Trump doesn't understand. Witkoff doesn't even know the different regions of Ukraine that he needs to know. So there's a fundamental lack of knowledge of Ukraine, the history, the geography. And then they're negotiating about Ukraine without Ukraine, about Europe without Europe. And then they come away going, oh, it turns out this is really difficult. And it turns out that we need Europe in the negotiations and Ukraine. Well, yeah. Jesus.
I think it's more basic than that. I think Trump in particular, but most of the people in his cabinet as well, they view Putin as some sort of, we must worship at the feet of this grand dictator, because that's what they all want to be. They understand that he's kind of threatening, but they still want to be on his good side. And Trump in particular, because we know he's got all these unsecured loans that have been arranged for him through the Russians, he can't really do anything to totally piss them off, or his little empire crumbles. So I think what we're looking at is a group of people in the Trump administration that are fundamentally trying to go against the best interests of not just the U.S. or the Western world in general, but the planet in a broad spectrum. It's whatever enriches them personally is all they care about. Their bank account is their God.
Yeah, and that's what's driving the negotiations, driving the minerals deal. It's extractive and exploitative, and it is nothing to do with caring one iota about Ukraine and the outcome for Ukraine. It's just
100%.
caring about how you can line your own pockets. It's really interesting. Sorry, I've done too much talking, but the really interesting data coming out from the Pew Research Center on the views of Republicans now and shifting just since November last year. And it seems to be that the Trump administration and the rhetoric with Zelensky and what happened in the Oval Office is driving Republican voters' views on Ukraine in a really fundamentally bad way. And that's the importance of the correct rhetoric coming from the top, because they are poisoning the Republican well at the moment, and that is a really horrible thing to see.
Yeah.
If I could interject really quick, I do follow those Pew Research, and if anybody wants to look at solid data that can be believed, Pew, it's PEW, Pew Research is really a good website for that. Gentlemen, if I could, we actually had a question that I think kind of mixes into this. It's from Sarah. She said, I'd like to ask a question for Commander, but I think a lot of people can interject on here regarding intel provided by the U.S. If others can replace it. But I want to tag on to that so we've got this whole thing about propaganda ceasefire. If there was something actually really agreed to, how quickly we know the Russian communication system is just horrible. How are we going to get that message in? I'm not worried about Ukraine because they're tapped in, but is it really, would the message get to every single unit on the Russian side to say, hey, stop lobbing stuff over to Ukraine? So comments on that?
The farther from the top your unit is, the longer it's going to take and the harder it's going to be for them to implement directions that are coming from above. So strategic level forces like the drone strikes, the missile strikes and such, those are tied in fairly closely with top level decision makers. So if an instruction came out, stop shooting for 24 hours or whatever, that could probably go into effect within an hour, I would say. But when you're talking about some small artillery battery or mortar team or something on the front lines, depending on where they are and what the situation at the front is, it could take days before they get told stop shooting.
That's unfortunate. If I could just make a quick shout out here, Niles Knutson sent 10 Shills Gifts membership. Thank you so much, Niles. It really helps the channel for that. And again, a reminder, links are being dropped for Car for Ukraine and Project Constantine. The war doesn't stop despite all the politics. They're sitting at tables with white tablecloths, and they're talking about this, and the defenders are on the front lines of Ukraine still doing their job like they always have. So times are starting to get a little tight, but whatever we can help with, both of these, we really, really need to help them out and keep things going. So
was Claire going to say something then?
Yeah, sure.
I'm sorry, Claire, were you just about to say something?
I have a question looming, but you can go first.
I just thought you were going to. I thought you were.
Oh, right. Yeah, I do have a question. Sorry. My question is, I know that Ukraine's agreed to the ceasefire, but I'm wondering whether that's just playing the game with Trump or whether they really do want a ceasefire now. Because from what I can see, from what the commander was saying, they're holding the Russians back and possibly even about to change the balance, because the Russians really are running out of resources in some way. Or is it that Ukraine's really keen for this ceasefire because they're so concerned about what will happen with their resources when, as the Biden backlog runs out, and is Europe ready to replace it? Does anybody, you have an answer on that?
I think, looking at what Ukraine is putting out through their Ministry of Foreign Affairs, their ambassadors, and Zelensky's initiative with United 24, it does seem that the thing they are driving home and the message they are really focusing on is that Ukraine honors ceasefires, Russia doesn't. And it's a message they've consistently put out with not just saying it, but by saying these are all the accords that's been broken, these are all the ceasefires that was broken. So they're almost kind of documenting Russia's history of not sticking to ceasefires. So I think that's the one thing that we're seeing is Ukraine will probably be like, yeah, sure, we'll ceasefire, but they also know Russia is going to break it. So they'll be like, yeah, sure, we agree to it. And I mean, we saw it when Trump discussed a ceasefire and Zelensky was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. And Putin said that's not happening. So I think it's really a thing of Ukraine knows Russia's not going to stick to it, but they need to show that they're playing ball. And I think, like Zelensky has said it, like nobody wants peace more than Ukraine, but it's a just peace that's needed, you know?
There's another aspect that's important to consider is that the Ukrainian military's logistics system is much more effective than that of the Russians. So if the ceasefire does go into effect, the Ukrainians benefit from it more because they'll be able to bring up supplies, rotate troops, et cetera, during said ceasefire, whereas the Russians are far more clumsy about getting stuff done. So it's going to be much harder for them to actually benefit from ceasefire. So it's in their interest, so to speak, not to honor a ceasefire because honoring one gives the Ukrainians an advantage.
I wanna ask Rudy something, and it's tying into, you know, the beliefs and propaganda. When you are, and I think you could tell us about this and not worry about doxing your video. Rudy, when you went to the demonstrations, of course we see the signs about don't touch my social security, don't touch my private information. How many signs are you seeing in your city that say support Ukraine?
I would say, I mean, today I couldn't believe how many people had signs. Easily 9 out of 10 people had signs. And I'd say, I mean, there was tons of signs for Ukraine. But yeah, I mean, there were so many people. Just about every person had signs. So yeah, it was pretty powerful today.
That's really good to hear. I've been, you know, on social media, there's a lot of photographs, but that's so good to hear. And I think the American people, when it comes to supporting things, the ones that believe in Ukraine and believe that they need to be free, they believe in their own rights as well as the rights of others. And that's what's unique about the population that's really supportive versus the other part. Slavie,
Yeah.
I want to, you love working on propaganda, and just give us a comment about, like, I'd like to hear a percentage about what percentage of this ceasefire that Putin gave is it 100% propaganda, or if everything worked right, do you think it actually could happen? What's your opinion on that?
If Putin would have actually given the ceasefire?
Mm-hmm. I mean, if everything worked out and he was intended to, it's zero.
Zero, because Russia can't stop the war. They literally can't, or they'll fall apart because they've been running on wartime economy for a very long time. Their mentality is wartime economy. They have all these men on the front line that are, I mean, PTSD, insane. They can't, like, Russia can't have like these insane men, orcs, going back into normal society. I mean, there's so many reasons why Russia will not and won't stop the war, and anything that they say that they'll do to stop it is a lie, complete another lie.
And Russia is famed for its psychological counseling of veterans.
Oh, Lord.
Not propaganda coming from the Kremlin. No.
So Slavie, if we could move on to this topic, and I think that everyone will have a comment on this. Russia is running out of resources, as we said, and there's been new evidence. So President Zelensky said that there's weapons from China coming in. Can you tell us a little bit about that news?
Yeah, I have to scroll down. Did it say weapons or?
Yeah, weapons from China, because China promised that they weren't going to give weapons, and now all of a sudden they see, they're looking at everything that's coming in, and they're like, "This came from China."
They've announced that they're going to present information about this in the coming week, and that they were talking about. I think it's both providing Russia with some of the ingredients to the weapons, like explosives, like nitrocellulose and stuff like that, that then allows Russia to make the weapons. And I don't know whether they're directly providing weapons. I think there's a mixture of potentials there, and I think we're yet to see the details on that. But either way, Russia wouldn't be able to produce the weapons without China's help there. So it's kind of functionally the same thing.
I think I did see something that it said that they were providing the materials for the production of the weapons, and that was still something that they said they would never do. What do you guys think the political fallout is now with the United States tariffing China and all of this? I mean, it's such a mixed bag, but what's going to be, let's say this does come to pass, that yes, we know it's China. What do you think the fallout for this is going to be?
This is sorry to answer again, but this is fascinating because you're in a really interesting dynamic where the US is trying to paint China as the enemy and trying to unite the world against China. But actually, the rest of the world is so pissed off with the US's tariffs that they're actually aligning themselves slightly more with China. So China's then doing these trade deals with a bunch of other nations, including trying to get closer with the EU. And the EU recognizes very clearly that Russia are the bad guys. So they then are looking at US saying, well, they seem to have joined the wrong side. And then China is going against the US, so they're kind of being better guys. But then the EU will also be very, very wary of China helping Russia, because also they're wary about China coming in the back door of the EU through Hungary. So the point is that there are so many complicated dynamics going on here that I think people are going to be caught between a rock and a hard place, because where the US has positioned themselves and where China naturally are. So I don't know the answer to this, but it is just going to be super complicated, and it could go any which way.
I think a lot of people need to make sure they've separated the old Cold War paradigm from the modern paradigm, because people often think the world is, us and them, the free West and the commies. That's no longer the case. China is acting as an independent actor for their own purposes. So they're frequently at odds with the Russians, but they're also helping the Russians because it aids their purposes. And that's the key thing to understand, is this is now at least a three-sided, if not a four-sided situation, because Europeans are kind of emerging as their own standalone power bloc outside of the American sphere. Thank goodness that's happening.
And then you get BRICS: Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, plus about 6 other nations. But actually, within BRICS, Russia is actually, like you say, not ideologically aligned with China. So they're both China particularly transactional nation that really looks after the food, and energy of its own country, and therefore it will do whatever it wants with Russia to its own benefit. And actually, you throw India on that as well, and they have a very much a similar outlook: 1 billion people, got to look after the food, got to look after the energy, and they aren't necessarily going to be ideologically aligned with BRICS. It's a very uncomfortable relationship, BRICS, and I think basically at the end of the day, everyone's going to be looking after themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, what I can see here in South Africa is the relationship between the EU and South Africa is growing stronger, with state visits between the councils becoming quite prominent.
Interesting.
And also, Ursula was in Cape Town like a few months ago, and she met with Zelensky, and they were like. And also Zelensky, she met with our president, not with Zelensky. She met with Cyril Ramaphosa in Cape Town. And then also Zelensky has announced a state visit to South Africa that was supposed to happen 10th of April, but it was delayed. So it's going to happen sometime. But he's also coming to South Africa to meet with Cyril Ramaphosa, because one of the key things that the African peace plan and the Ukraine peace plan is the return of children. So I'm also seeing that step up. So from a South African point of view, I'm looking at things, and South Africa is in a weird space as well, because everyone is like, yeah, but we know America does what America does. And at the same time, you're seeing this thing where Europe is our biggest trading partner, the European Union, and Russia is kind of falling off. They've got this echo chamber, but most people are kind of aware that, we know where the bread is being buttered, and it's not, yeah. So it's that thing of like seeing how things play out. So it's, yeah.
So from the Australian point of view, because we're in pretty much the China zone, if the world got carved up, we'd be Chinese. And China's on the Xi is on a charm offensive around Southeast Asia at the moment, going to a whole lot of different countries. And that was pre-planned, but because of the tariffs, it's now become a thing of China really shoring up support for the support they can give and get in return from Southeast Asia, because Southeast Asia is a very poor area. It's very dependent on aid for a lot of programs. And if America's stepping completely out of that space, then China's absolutely enthusiastic to step in and to make military bases, and a whole lot of things will fall out from that. And there's been this big scandal of, are they looking for a base in Indonesian New Guinea or not? And the Indonesians are being very coy about it. It's been a big drama in Australian politics this week because we've got an election looming, and it's become an election issue about whether it was inappropriate to speak of this possible base in Indonesia. And it's actually really changing the whole demographic of Southeast Asia, because they've always been a little bit wary about China because they actually don't want to be taken over by China. But at the same time, if they see no potential in having any support or good relations with America, then China's the natural one to go for. It's the guy. And they'll do their Belt and Road thing and pretty much take over the country, provide policing units to help them keep control of their populations. And it's really kind of opened up that door very, very wide.
So, Claire, this is the insanity of the Trump tariff regime, because
Totally.
So what had happened previously is that, take Vietnam, for example. Vietnam's a really good example of a country that the US was trying to get in their sphere of influence and take it away from China's sphere of influence, to get manufacturing based in Vietnam as opposed to China, because they could influence Vietnam more easily than China. So they were saying, right, make stuff in Vietnam and then we'll buy it off Vietnam. And this is all part of a strategic approach to global geopolitics and the economy. Then Trump gets in and goes, do you know what we're going to do? We're going to look at trade deficits and surpluses, and we're going to work out tariffs based on that, not reciprocal tariffs. So they looked at Vietnam and said, well, we buy loads of stuff off you, so we're going to put really high tariffs on you. And they tariffs on 46%, which was exactly what, the trade deficit was exactly what the US was striving for, which is, we want you guys to build our cheap stuff and not China, so that we can influence Vietnam. And then they walk along, Trump comes in and said, and we're going to punish you for doing that. And Vietnam are like, hang on, you just told us to do this for the last 10 years. This is kind of the aim of the TTP, as it would have been. And now you're punishing us by, and all the Trump administration is doing is destroying their Indo-Pacific strategy by sending people back into the sphere of influence of China. Is utter stupidity.
Yeah, what the Trump administration understands about actual economics can be written in extremely large letters on the head of the world's tiniest pin.
Yes, agreed.
But isn't also the Trump process that you upend the table, you let everything fall around on the floor, and then you wait to see who gets back up on the table first? You don't actually kind of guide that in any way. You just create chaos, because from chaos you get everybody confused. Nobody knows what's going on. They're all terrified that you're going to tip them off the table again, so they struggle to cling to the table and do the thing that you want them to do, which is show obsequiousness. And that's all it's about.
But it's not 4D chess, and it's not going to get you long-term strategic goals, because that is short-termist, like, power play. Yes, but it's ridiculous.
Claire, don't forget about when he upends the table, the ketchup packets go flying and the French fries go against the wall. Do you remember that from the? Oh, that was a big thing that he was when the January 6th riots were going on. He was sitting, in the White House. He was eating McDonald's and watching the news. And apparently, when something happened, he threw the whole thing against the wall and French fries and ketchup packets. Slavie,
He was just doing modern art, okay? It's just modern art.
Abstract modern art. Slavie,
Annette,
if you want to check the green room quick, I put something in there that I do want to bring up. I'm sorry to interrupt you guys, but the viewer questions are stacking up here and they are quite good.
Annette, sorry, before you go on, there was a viewer question that you asked from Sarah that was actually one of the most important questions in my opinion. And actually we didn't answer it because we went off on one. Is it all right if we have a stab at answering Sarah's question?
Absolutely.
It was really good. It was the one
About
that you
the
asked.
Intel. Mm-hmm.
Yes, can you re-ask that?
Sure. Sarah says, I'd like to ask a question regarding intel provided by the U.S. if EU or others can replace it. Because I think at one time we said we were going to stop. So
this
we did. You did stop for a bit. But
yeah, this is one of the single most important questions in my opinion. So Zelensky and Ukraine keep going back to the United States and they keep trying to do deals and keep trying to adhere to what the US is saying, what Trump is saying. The question is, why is that? Because realistically, you would just jettison the US at the moment because they are being counterproductive. So therefore, there is something that the US provides for Ukraine that Ukraine absolutely 100% needs. And my speculation is it's something to do with intelligence sharing. So it's something to do with target acquisition, particularly for ballistic missiles. And I'd say one of the reasons ballistic missiles are getting through is possibly because Patriot systems have been hit, and actually they've probably suffered some degradation on actual Patriots. We hear a lot about Shahid drones getting through, but don't hear about what they hit quite often. I think Patriots have been hit. I also think they're struggling to get interceptors, and I also think they're super worried about US intelligence going offline, and that's stopping the Ukrainians being able to hit ballistic missiles, particularly as they come into Kiev. Now, Kiev is on the table again as being a thoroughly vulnerable place. That's a capital city, and that is the absolute beating heart of Ukraine. And my speculation is that if the US go, and if they go and then provide that information to Russia, that's obviously insanely bad. But if they stop providing that to Ukraine, General Cavoli said in a committee hearing recently in the US that the US are unique in being able to provide certain intelligence information to Ukraine. And if we're going to take him at his word, that means that no, the Europeans probably can't fill in that gap particularly easily. And I think that is why the Ukrainians keep going back to the US, because they absolutely need them for that particular area. I think the intelligence sharing question is critical to what's going on with the peace negotiations.
It's a slight bit more complex, but you've hit on one of the essential elements is that all the incoming strikes against Ukraine, they need that advance warning to get their defenses alerted, get interceptors in the air, et cetera, in advance. And only the U.S. really has that capability. The other capability that potentially is lost is many of the deep strikes we're seeing the Ukrainians conduct against Russian logistic and command control hubs behind the front lines are also similarly using U.S.-based intel on finding and striking those targets. And if that evaporates, the chances of being able to hit those targets at the same level of efficiency and frequency becomes problematic.
Which is what Cavoli also said, wasn't it, in that hearing? He was talking about those deep strikes. And interestingly, when we talk about why is it that Storm Shadows weren't allowed to be used deep into Russia, and then Keir Starmer came along, new Prime Minister said, yeah, you can use that. And then the MOD had to come out in the UK and say, actually, they can't use that. And people started blaming Keir Starmer and the government. But actually, it appears that it was the American targeting or the Storm Shadows that the usage of Storm Shadows was contingent upon. So it was actually the British were like, yeah, you can use these, but actually they couldn't use them because it was the targeting data from the Americans that was needed in order to use them. So it's a bit, it
like
was
the
uncomfortable.
secret in World War II. Yeah, we had broken the German codes. We knew a lot about what was going on, but we couldn't exploit it because the moment you start exploiting it, the enemy realized how capable you are of doing that. And it's the same situation if the Storm Shadows or other very deep strike capabilities are used against the Russians, then they begin to know how much we're able to exploit our intelligence to hit those kind of targets.
Actually, I have a question for both of you, because I think it will be interesting to hear, Commander, you from an American perspective, and Johnny, you obviously from the UK perspective. But with this kind of, issue that, or the question that America poses at the current moment, right? Is there a European country that is equipped to step up in providing intelligence, or has the possibility to develop that? Because I know with nukes, a lot of countries are switching over to France and working on, getting protection from France than America. But is there where is this going? Are people going to continue to rely on the US, or will there be a direction towards other countries to provide intelligence?
There's two issues. One is that the U.S. has technical superiority in intelligence collecting systems through the NSA, monitoring communications, satellite photography, that the other nations have nothing comparable. Conversely, I would argue that the British, the French, some other European countries have better developed human source intelligence that the U.S. lacks. So that kind of intelligence, the human source stuff, is not as readily usable for tactical or even operational level military operations. So both sides benefit from each other. And when we were working together with the NATO partners as closely as we were, both sides contributed to that intelligence picture, and everybody was able to use that to much greater effect. But now with the current administration shoving its head firmly up its ass, both sides are actually suffering because the Europeans are far less likely to well with us, just as we are less likely to share info from our technical side stuff with them.
Yeah, it's a shame because Five Eyes has been somewhat not compromised, but rendered pretty interesting. So Five Eyes being, US, Canada, United Kingdom, Australia, New Zealand working together. Instead of all 5 nations doing the same thing around the world, you can pool your resources and work together. And that's the human intelligence particularly, but actually it's all forms of intelligence. So I think that France is the interesting one because they've always tried to be independent and everyone was always like, why are you so difficult, France? Why are you being so blah, blah, blah? And now everyone's going, that's a really clever idea, France. America appear to be nuts. And so to some degree, France can provide that. I mean, they do have satellite provision, which is pretty decent. I think UK has abilities, but where the Americans have, it's not just a technological advantage, but it's also a mass advantage. So if you're thinking about just an example of the nearer satellites like the ones that Elon Musk operates, he's got, 3,500, 4,000 satellites shooting around Earth. So just if OneWeb and Eutelsat want to compete, then we can. Europe can do it, but like you were kind of hinting, Jana, it could take a long time. There's time involved. So, Europe are going to have to go and do this kind of capability themselves, but you're talking 10 to 15 years. And Eutelsat just came out and said, we need $30 billion to be able to compete with Starlink and Elon Musk. So we can do it, and they provided a bunch of dishes, but they're bigger, more expensive than the Starlink ones. That's just in terms of Starlink. But if you talk about satellite provision, yes, there is a capability. It's just it would take a lot more investment, more time, and it won't be quite as good at the moment. But we can step in to some degree, and the French are pretty good.
Thanks, Charles de Gaulle. Thank you to Charles de Gaulle.
Yeah.
Oh
So
my
everyone hated him. Charles de Gaulle was but now everyone's like, yeah.
How history has changed and the progression of events has changed our perspective on him.
Only Yana would bring that up. You've got such an intellectual take on everything. That's interesting. I love it. I love it. Slavie and I are going to tag team some questions because our viewers, they put questions in and they are good ones. So I want to make sure we get to those, and I'm sure we'll branch off onto other things. Actually, another shout out to Niles Knudsen gave another 10 memberships. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. That it absolutely helps us. Bobo Azula, are there active U.S. service personnel leaving service and joining, I think probably in the U.S. maybe, and joining the Ukrainian National Legion? Is this happening by any significant numbers? Anybody know or have a comment on that?
Go ahead, Kim.
I have a comment, which is because we get the vehicle requests, a lot of English-speaking people will request a vehicle, even though because the other requests go to the Ukrainian team, whereas Ivan and I are seen as English-speaking, and we get an awful lot of requests from English-speaking soldiers, either in a Ukrainian unit or in a Foreign Legion unit with their own speakers. Like we had a big request from a Spanish English-speaking unit, and that the whole unit spoke Spanish together. They had a Ukrainian translator embedded with them, but but whether
They
it's
were
on
Colombians. I bet they were Colombians.
no, they were Spanish, Australian. There were various sources from these people. They'd come from all over the world, actually, and they were a very big unit. But they're obviously people who come from military in their own country and thought this was a good fight to get into. But then were joined up into the Ukrainian. They're actually in the Ukrainian army, but they were a Foreign Legion unit of their own, with where they put the Spanish-speaking people. And but I can't say whether it's happening at scale, but certainly we get a lot. And not so many Americans necessarily, but they're there. The English are there. The Australians are there in small numbers. And so if Australians are there, it's like we don't have that bigger militaries. There's got to be a lot from, big militaries, because, this is what you're trained for. So a lot of them go there because it's their natural inclination, but they really fall in love with the country once they arrive, and they kind of put in a sort of life commitment, I think you'd have to say. They form relationships, they have an intention to stay in that country. But I don't know the scale of it. I really can't judge that, except we get a lot.
I think you would really need it to be scaled up. I mean, there's one thing talking about like 50, 100, 200, but, I've often thought that they really need to push a massive international legion again, sort of like the beginning of the war. But the problem is, when you have international fighters, is that they become a real liability if they get captured, because they are, whether you like it or not, they are like, and I say this with all the caveats, they are worth more than Ukrainians. By point of fact that that country that fighter is represented or from will be fighting tooth and nail to get that person back from captivity, and that's a leverage point for the Russians. So it wouldn't be the same if it is a Ukrainian POW. And so, on the one hand, I think you want loads of international people to come and help bolster the boots on the ground and the numbers. On the other hand, it is a big risk, unless they can do things further back, like air defense and all these other things that are less risky for being captured.
That is
really
I know
sad. Foreigners are now. Sorry.
No, I think you're going to comment on this too. That I think behind the scenes, and I know Yana has too, we do hear about there are prices on people's heads, and it's just heartbreaking. Yana, what were you going to say?
Yeah, so there are prices on people's heads. Even people, once they return back from fighting, they still get targeted. Like, they'll get contacted, and so it is a thing. And that's the one thing. The other thing is, if you guys are curious about, how much or how many or how prominent foreign fighters in Ukraine are, there's the Ukrainian Foreign Legion subreddit has a lot of stuff, and it's not just Foreign Legion stuff. But you really get to gauge what's going on there. And I know a lot of the Ukrainian units have started recruiting foreigners. So you guys know Vipers, guys. their foreigners. The 3rd Assault Brigade has started recruiting a foreign unit as well that they're building up. I think, they're building it up. A lot of the other, well-established brigades are also recruiting foreigners for like Western-specific groups and
So-
units and companies.
So what you're saying is, rather than independent foreign units, the Ukrainian army is now more integrating foreign recruits into the regular formations.
And big reason for this is the Legion is not that great. And I say this as someone who's not in the Legion, but I remember Pete was in it and he just said no. And I spoke to Viper and he was also like, eh. So there's a bit of a thing where you've got a lot of commanders who try to make name for themselves. And when you do that, there's usually quite a body count, Whereas if you're with a good, well-oiled Ukrainian unit and you can kind of work in tandem with them, it works a lot easier. And it works better. There's more cohesion between, I think, the different units. So you are seeing a shift of people who used to just go, they would go from America or wherever to the Legion. And now you're seeing people going from wherever and they're going directly to 3rd Assault or wherever else. So that's a shift that we're seeing.
Yeah, they're going contract soldier in the regular Ukrainian units. Yeah, that's great information, Yana. Thank you for that. Slavie, do you want to bring up the next question for us, for our panel?
Yes, absolutely. Next question is from Elizabeth, and she asks, how has Donald's withdrawal from the UNHCR for all intents and purposes affected humanitarian efforts? So anybody wants to take a shot at it, and then I'll answer it as well, in my opinion.
I don't know really anything about this, but I'll just say something far more general and probably not very useful. But Donald Trump is not a fan of alliances because he's a transactional leader, which means he sees everything as a zero-sum game. Zero-sum game means that if you do well, it means that we are doing badly. And if we do well as the US, it means you're doing badly. And because we want to do well, necessarily you must do badly. And alliances don't fit into that, which is a positive sum game approach to doing, to cooperating, which is that both of us do well out of being in the UN, out of being in NATO, out of being in the EU, as being part of a trade bloc. And of course, Donald Trump doesn't see in those terms, so he doesn't want to be part of anything. So he's trying to pull out. The WHO was the first one, World Health Organization. Then we've heard recently he wants to pull out of the UN, defunding the UN and defunding NATO.
That was the question.
Marco Rubio came out and stated or set a bill in. He brought a bill to the Congress a couple of years ago saying that there needs to be a supermajority or similar in order for the president to pull the US out of NATO. So he was looking to the future. Rubio knew what Trump was like. So he's trying to Trump-proof the US from NATO. But now the way that Trump is doing it is by defunding the US NATO activities and all these kind of things. So the US is just pulling out of any form of alliance, and the UN, the UNHCR, whatever it is. And I don't know how that affects humanitarian aid, but just generally that is where the US is.
I know when there was the whole balls up with USAID, I saw a lot of, there's a specific organization in Ukraine, I forgot the name, but they work with rehabilitating veterans, and they had to close their offices because they just said, we are not getting the funding, we don't have the ability to do that. So you are seeing kind of a ripple effect of that happening, and because it was cut off so abruptly, a lot of these places were suddenly just saying, like, we're sorry, we can't. So
Brendan Kelly from Touchny, he writes about Kherson routinely, and he wrote a piece about how after USAID funding was cut, and now that seems, 85% of that seems to have been gone full stop. There were at least 50 organizations in Kherson alone. So this is one town, one city in Ukraine, 50 organizations plus that were being hit by the lack of funding from USAID. So you multiply that across Ukraine, and you can see just the USAID funding being hugely, hugely impactful.
But it's not just Ukraine. It's also here in the U.S. itself. Funds
100%.
many of those kind of programs here in the U.S., disaster relief support, etc. Those are all drying up. The idea is, why should I give you anything if I can't embezzle it from my own bank account? The hell with it.
Well, it was farmers as well. So farmers in the US were getting hit because the USAID funding was like, oh, we don't need to be feeding all these people in Africa, and we don't need to be giving all of these, vaccines and whatnot to these poor people in a different country. And then you had all the farmers going, hang on, that was our contracts that you've just ripped up, and vaccine manufacturers going, hang on, that we're the ones, it's a form of economic stimulus, USAID, to some degree in some places in the US, not obviously not completely, but yeah.
Slavie, what was your... I'm sorry, go ahead, Yana, and then I want to go to Slavie and hear what she has to say about that.
And I think if it was like announced and there was, announced and it was like, okay, cool, in 3 months' time, we will be stopping it. That would have helped to give people access and at least prepare stuff. Because in South Africa, it got cut, and our clinics where people get treated for AIDS were cut, and you had babies being born with AIDS who would not have had AIDS otherwise, But if it was like, cool, okay, it's going to be a phased process, then people would have known what to do about it. But because it was cut so abruptly, it's
chaos.
The analogy was let's take a scalpel and let's be careful and do this over time, rather than just taking a sledgehammer and a ditch digger
painful
to this. Slavie, what's your comment about this?
So the question was more towards UN Human Rights Council. So for the U.S. funding to key UN humanitarian agencies, significantly disrupted aid for Ukraine. U.S. provided over 40% of UNHCR's budget, and this funding cut has forced agency to reduce services affecting millions of displaced Ukrainians worldwide. And in Ukraine, the cessation of assistance led to disruptions in shelter repairs, healthcare services, mental health support for children, and multi-purpose cash aid, impacting over 1 million people in need. So,
Can I just say, sorry, I've got to shoot now, and I'm really sorry for having monopolized a lot of the conversation. I do apologize for that. But thank you very much for inviting me onto this panel. I'm just about to be strung up by my partner for running away. So,
Jonathan, we love you here. And it's been a privilege for me to be on the panel with you. It's like I'm glad Dick is off celebrating, so I got a chance to meet you. Because a lot of times I work behind the scenes. Our viewers love you, so you're
wow.
Jonathan. Yeah. So, no, and we're always, happy to see you. And, no, you're always 100,000,000% welcome here as well as everybody else. So wonderful meeting you. And thank you so much for being part of our panel today.
Thank you, and thank you all, and keep up the marvelous work as we're all, trying to work together towards a great goal. And speaking of which, Claire, for Kharkiv, Ukraine, I'm part of this campaign as well. So Claire, thank you for all you do, and I hope that we'll do you proud.
Well, likewise, Jonathan, we're very excited to see you here and to see you launch your campaign and see how you go. I'm sure you'll be fabulous, and your community is very, very strong for Kharkiv, Ukraine, and we're grateful for that. So go, Jonathan, is all I can say. Brilliant.
You, take care, y'all.
You too. Thank you. And just a reminder again, the links are being dropped in there. The need for trucks for Ukraine, Claire's Kharkiv, Ukraine fundraising is so important to keep that going. And we have Project Constantine, Yana. Again, it never stops. And I'll just repeat myself for new viewers that we've got politicians sitting at tables with white tablecloths and the defenders are sitting in the dirt. So let's get them all the help they need to keep going on this.
And on that score, as I've said before, the Ukraine cannot win this war with vehicles, but without vehicles, it cannot win the war either. So they desperately need vehicles. It's the most requested thing. I mean, drones and vehicles are the thing of the moment, and there's an endless need for vehicles. They get blown up. They just need more. They need them for retrievals. They need them for moving things around. They need them to get to the front. There's those endless videos of people walking for miles and miles and miles. Well, it's not a very comfortable situation when you get attacked and you're trying to get your wounded out. So you need to, they need vehicles. And at the moment, our focus is on the attack drone squads, which have been doing the revenge work for Sumi. And we've got 2 attack drone squads that are focused in this campaign. So get behind it. It's a really good cause. Thank you, Annette.
I'm actually messaging Dick because I want to see if he can get a break to come in and show that video of the truck, because we have it clipped out. I apologize, everybody. I do have some things I can do behind the scenes here, but bringing in video is something that Dick has to do. But I saw this clip because I hope I'm doing enough for Claire on Blue Sky, but I'm behind the Shills account as well as Shayna. And I saw that video and I pulled it in and I said, everybody, you have to see this. I'm not going to, we didn't show it last night, but there's a lot more people in the chat. And it's vehicles that are needed to bring people out if they're wounded. But this truck is so impressive at what it does.
Yeah.
So,
do you want me to explain it now so that Dick can just come in and show the video and then go again?
Let me message him. Let's do this. Slavie, can you ask another question? And then Claire, I'm going to message him. And then if he says, yep, I can come in, I'll have you explain it then.
Okay.
I'm sorry. I sort of feel inadequate here, but I'm doing the best I can.
Oh, to have like somebody's driving a motorcycle and on the street, and it's really, really loud, annoying.
We can't hear it, which is good. Yeah,
because it's really loud here. But the next question is from Whitefishy1, and this is for Lancer Mike. How confident are you in that Intel tech capability under Tulsi Gabbard?
Wow. As I said in the chat, responding to that particular question, I do not doubt for a moment that she hasn't already started passing intel illegally to various foreign sources and probably for personal profit. I have
The highest payer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I'm sure Russia pays China for most of the help they're getting from China. I think they have to.
Do you think United States or people that are around her, like with Americans, would, if they knew about it, would let that happen?
Wait, say it again.
The question is, if the U.S. knew she was doing that, would we do anything to stop her?
Yeah.
And the current administration, she's a cabinet member, basically, and she can do whatever she wants because she's protected by the MAGA crowd and the Orange God King.
Yeah,
So-
it would have to be one of them that removes her, and none of them are
exactly. And then the people in the cabinet were basically selected not for competence, but for loyalty. Because the most terrifying thing to Trump is that somebody might want to invoke the 25th Amendment.
Essentially,
What's the 25th Amendment? Please
this is
help.
exactly what happens in.
It's where the cabinet gets together and basically says, we no longer have confidence in you. You're gone. We're replacing you. The vice president moves up.
Right.
Got it.
Oh, well, the vice president won't. But to give you an indication of the Chinese capability, there are people in Australia who are coerced into doing spy work or releasing information or giving access to politicians for China. And they're coerced by the Chinese government, even though they don't necessarily want to do it. They might be paid, or they might be threatened, or their family might be threatened back in China. So it's very much by the Russian sort of playbook. It's quite widespread, but it's so under the cover because the Chinese are so much a kind of run their own kind of closed society in a lot of ways. But
We have a large contingent of Chinese
America's not doing anything.
attending U.S. universities. And it's known that many of them, as a precondition of being approved to be able to come to the U.S. for education, they were told, you will collect intelligence for us. And if you don't, your family will suffer.
Yep. So, and the question was, can America do anything about that, I think? Or I missed the point of the question, but it seems they can't. The funny story I can tell you is about 10 years ago, Australia's ASIO was building a new building in Canberra, ASIO being our intelligence operation, and international and local. It's the one and only. And they were building this big new building and making it really cyber secure and everything like that. And before the building was finished, it was realized that the Chinese had wired up the building before the main wiring guys had come in to connect all the computers. So they had to gut the building to restart the whole program. I mean, the Chinese were so ahead of us. I know we look inept when you tell stories like that, but it does give you some idea of the Chinese capability.
Rudy, any comments on that?
No.
Okay.
On ASIO or intelligence?
No,
I don't know too much about tiny stuff.
I just want to give everyone, we have such a great panel. I want to make sure I get around to everybody here. And we do have some good questions coming in. I just want to make a little comment about some things going on in the chat. We have an amazing team, and a lot of times I'm in there and I'm part of it. The Shills absolutely accepts when people have opinions. You can be for the war, against the war. It's okay to have an opinion. I haven't really seen any hate speech today, so that's great. Thank you for that. However, when people put things in the chat and keep repeating them and not really spam, they just want to say things like Ukraine's losing the war, Zelensky should go. Point made. But when you do that, you are actually kind of poking the bear on a lot of our listeners. And what you're doing is distracting from our guests. These people are taking their valuable time to be here and answer questions. They don't have to be here. They want to be here. And when you sideline the chat and everybody is just sitting there going, oh, troll, whatever, you're not listening to our panel. You have no idea how amazing this panel is and how hard they work and the information they have. So I ask you, normally I write it in the chat because that's where I am, but I want you to give them the respect and the time to not sideline everything and respect them and listen to them because they have information that you're not going to hear anywhere else. Thank you.
Well said. Well said.
Okay.
I hope so.
Let's see. Bobo, you asked if anyone has been to today's protests. And yes, we did cover that a little bit before. And Rudy has been there. I'll give him a chance there after we get to the next question. Rudy's going to be making a video too, so make sure you check out that channel. But he'll give a little update, a little more on that if he can. Let's see. Annette, does anyone have any information about the deal to protect the Black Sea trade? Good question.
I was looking at that question, but I have no idea.
I didn't know there was a deal.
There
It's a holdover from the previous formal deal, which had been signed between Russia and Ukraine and other countries to allow grain traffic to, come out of Odessa. That expired, but they've more or less been holding to that arrangement up until then. There have been a couple of noteworthy violations, but not major ones. So it's ongoing, but it's not formal, I think is the best way to put it.
It's not perfect. I think it's been brought up as part of like a little segment for a new peace deal. Well, can we start with this and start with that? But everything just seems to be falling apart a little bit. Do you want, Slavie, can you read the last question there?
Oh,
Or-
well, I wanted to go to the next news, which was pretty
Oh,
big.
sure. Go ahead.
Because since we were talking about deals, but this one was U.S.-Ukraine Minerals Memorandum that was signed on April 17th. So this was a memorandum of intent signed between Ukraine and United States as a kind of preliminary step toward a comprehensive agreement on developing Ukraine's, or I don't want to say developing, but minerals, basically taking Ukraine's minerals all for themselves. But yeah, it was pretty big news. I just like how they did the memorandum of intent, which in this memorandum, it does acknowledge Ukraine's Budapest memorandum as well, and which was interesting, but it does not have security guarantees. So there's
That sucks.
A memorandum of intent is not a binding arrangement. That's one of the key things to understand.
But I think United States is Ukraine is kind of playing ball on this.
Yeah.
On this deal, and that's why there was like, well, we'll sign this memorandum and have an agreement in the near future, basically.
Yeah, and it's kind of like published on, I think, on the Trump side as this big win, you know, but actually, like it's not a
round. It's a win for Ukraine. It's basically Ukraine holding the doggy biscuit and saying, "Jump for it, jump for it."
Yeah.
true. Yeah.
Yeah, Trump also emphasized that this minerals deal is a part of kind of broader effort to grant the U.S. preferred access to Ukraine's natural resources as a form of repayment for past military aid. But as we know, that it's bullshit that Ukraine, it's aid. You shouldn't have to. It's not debt. It's completely different things. But yeah, Trump is still stuck on that big time.
Isn't it about keeping America engaged in Ukraine and getting them investing in Ukraine long term? And, it's about the reconstruction of Ukraine as well as any sort of protecting sites that they may be invested in now and trying to keep Trump engaged in some way in Ukraine so he doesn't walk away entirely. Isn't that the reason?
The proposal that they're putting forward is really, really weird.
It's really bad.
Slavie,
Actually, there's a lot of concerns about it, especially with the EU, because if Ukraine signs it, EU won't. Their accession to the EU won't go for it. So
yeah, and I mean it's what's been proposed so far. It's literally like it's almost like a colonialism style extortion takeover of Ukraine's resources. And I'm like, that is a very weird thing to see happen in today's time in the 21st century, and you have kind of Russia on the one hand doing it, and you've got Ukraine, you've got America doing it, and it's, I don't know, it just kind of feels like Africa and the Americas and South Americas in the 1600s, where they're kind of like diving up for the resources,
But I don't think Ukraine's going to give away all their resources. I think it's more about setting up some sort of business investments in Ukraine that they're aiming for. It's what I'm assuming.
I think it has to be
anything more about it.
Well, it's as an American, I can tell you what I'm seeing is that Trump seems to be going in and wanting to completely take advantage. And if there was just something that said, listen, we're going to do a minerals deal, but it's going to be really good for Ukraine. And also we're going to, Ukraine will be sharing, with with the world. But that's the frustration that people in the United States have, is that everything is so one-sided. Me, 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 me. And there's honestly, every day our heads go because we just can't. It goes against pretty much everything that the United States has ever been about. And even people who aren't even involved with politics, when they're just watching the regular news, whether it's something personal going on here with our retirements tanking, the people who are more, their brains are expanding to really care about the aid that goes around the world. That was a big one. A lot of people, maybe they didn't know the name USAID, but when they heard people are starving, they're not getting the medical care, that was a big thing. And we are sitting here frustrated. One of the listeners, he said, Annette, we're all angry, we're all frustrated. And it's true, because we're sitting here going, we have to do something. But again, our government is set up the way it is, and there's not a majority. I saw a sign that said something about, we have the price of eggs. You've heard all that, right? And they said, we don't have enough eggs because all the chickens are in Congress.
That's funny.
I saw another one too that you guys, I wish I could put it up, but so just imagine in your mind, there's a chessboard, and like 4 or 5 of the top leaders in the EU are sitting around that, and then you've got Trump sitting with the checkerboard. And it's really a good analogy, because politics around the world is a chess game, and here's Trump just trying to figure out the checkers.
I mean, black, white. Yeah.
Well, here's the thing. They made all of the checkers the same color. So
I've seen that.
With Trump, it's more like tic-tac-toe than checkers.
X's and O's, that's all he can do in his brain. Slavie, did you have any other thing? I wanted to grab a couple more questions here. Any other comment about that?
I just wanted kind of a last comment on this minerals memorandum. This is also came in very timely from this past week, because in the beginning of the week, China halted all its exports of minerals to the United States. So the United States is looking, they need their minerals. So now they're looking at Ukraine, and the United States really needs the seal. We need to find it. So well done by Ukraine. Great timing.
I'm convinced that Trump thinks the world in terms of like the game risk. So I got this whole continent to myself, so I should get all the bonuses. What do you mean I have to get stuff from other continents? That's not fair. You're changing the rules on me.
Bizarre.
Yeah, he's also, isn't he the banker in Monopoly? He has to buy Park Place and all of that too. That's terrible. I would not want to be a leader that my tactics have analogies to stupid games. So let's see here. This from It Wasn't Me to Commander. Has there ever been an active member of the U.S. cabinet in need of a presidential pardon?
I'm pretty certain that there were for Watergate.
Goes back a while.
That would make sense, though.
Yeah, and
Watergate looks so tame now.
Yeah, and I know at the time we were all aghast, and today we'll be like, yeah, who cares? It's irrelevant.
It's so small game.
Yeah. In addition to Watergate, there's also Iran-Contra. I think that there were at least 1 or 2 cabinet members that were kind of had their fingers in that pie and may have needed, I don't think they got, and I don't think they were prosecuted for their actions, but certainly pardons were discussed, we'll put it that way.
On another topic, there's
And I'll just note for the record, we're talking Republican administrations. Common thread? I can't say, but just putting it out there.
On another thread, is there, I've heard reports of a big prisoner exchange today, like very large prisoner exchange.
Oh
in
yeah,
Ukraine. Anybody got news on that?
277 people were returned.
Yeah, Slavie, did you have that article about the prisoner exchange?
Do we know as of numbers?
I've got.
Sorry, I've come. It's only because it came up in the chat that some prisoners had been exchanged, and I thought, yeah, that's really interesting. It's a very big day for prisoner exchange, I believe. So I thought it might be at the front of everybody's mind, but not. We're all overwhelmed with news, I think.
There was so I had okay, let's see, that was about, because I did to get some of yes, I have it. This is actually off of Twitter this morning. It was very quick, very new news from President Zelensky. It says, "Our people are home. One of the best pieces of news that can be. Another 277 warriors have returned home from Russian captivity. The warriors of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the National Guard of Ukraine, the State Special Transport Service, and the Border Guards. They defended Mariupol and other directions in the Donetsk, Kherson, Zaporizhia, and Luhansk regions. I thank everyone who made this return of our people possible. I'm especially grateful to the United Arab Emirates for their mediation. In total, since the beginning of the full-scale war, 4,552 people, both warriors and civilians, have been successfully brought back home from Russian imprisonment. We remember all of those who remain in captivity and hope they come home soon."
Right. Good. Good. Well, some long-term prisoners there, if they were defending Mariupol. They go right back to the beginning, don't they? So
Yeah.
that'll be great to have them
Yeah,
back.
there's a 26-year-old, he was 26-year-old at the time, and stood up against Russia at the start of the full-scale invasion on the first day. In 2 weeks, he was captured, and he was a prisoner for over 1,100 days, and he was returned today. So, I mean, I know Halina had, so as you guys know, or don't know, I don't know, but she's a psychologist, and she's recently done a course on like some extra training on how to help people who were in Russian captivity, how to help them recover. So, you know, it's such a thing that it's going on. And there is a woman, when I was in Odessa, we went to a protest there because a lot of the women who Halina knows and works with, some of their husbands are in captivity or they haven't heard from them. And the one woman, she hasn't heard from her. First, she was told her husband was killed. And then she said, okay, well, if that's the case, show me the body. And later the commander came back and said, yeah, sorry, we can't find the body. And everyone kind of assumes the guy is dead, but this woman believes her husband is alive. And it's been going on for 2+ years now with no word from him. She's gone to, you know, because the Red Cross is supposed to monitor who, like, and have lists of names of all the prisoners and everything. But another woman, also in Halina's community, had the same thing where her husband was told he's dead. She was like, I mean, okay. And he came back on a prisoner exchange. During a prisoner exchange, he wasn't on any list.
Wow.
Okay, so they said he's dead. We can't find him. Actually, we don't know where he is, but he's not on any list. So you have this big problem where we don't even know the names of everyone who is held in captivity by Russia.
Yeah.
And the communities who are supposed to be doing, or the organizations who are supposed to be doing that, like the Red Cross, are not doing their job.
I don't think
because the Russians won't play along, right?
Russia literally won't let Red Cross in. There's a lot of reports that they can't come into the torture prison chambers, basically.
Yeah. So
One
it
assumes
is.
Red Cross is dependent on American aid.
Absolutely.
I don't know. Yeah.
So I want to
Sorry, Anna.
we're going for almost 2 hours here, and I don't want to take any more of everybody's valuable time. It's such a great panel. We could go on for hours with all the information everybody has. So what I'd like to do is go to Rudy. If he could tell us a little bit about what he's seen at the protest. He did go to a protest today. He's going to be making a video on the channel, but if you could give us an update on that, and that'll kind of be your wrap up, and then we'll go around to everybody else. Claire, I want to, you know what? Dick just said, let me ask him, Dick, do we have enough time to show that video really quick for Claire? Let me go to the green room here. I see him writing. Let me just go ahead and read out some of the, okay, we'll let him, if this comes on, I'll stop talking. We did have the Weasel send in 5 gift memberships. We had Nels Knudsen send in memberships again. Thank you so much. And Anita K sent in a Shills membership. Thank you for the support, everybody. Let me see here. Let me go in and see what we're doing. Dick's got to be quick because I think he has someone watching his son. But if you can cue that video up for Claire, Dick, that would be awesome. I hear noise.
Somebody's typing. Somebody's typing on a tinny keyboard.
Okay.
So do you want me to introduce it? Is he going to play
go
it?
ahead. Go ahead. I'm hoping he can.
Okay, so this is CAF Ukraine has an arrangement. It's not really a contract, but an arrangement with a they call it a charity, and it's registered as a charity in Ukraine. It's an independent group from us, but they are the ones who convert pickup trucks to mobile rocket launchers. And when they get a pickup truck, it takes a lot of work to convert it, but they need the really top quality Hilux trucks that can carry a lot of weight and have got powerful engines because these things are incredibly heavy. They take the entire back off the pickup, they reinforce the suspension, they then put in the brackets that hold the firing system in place, and they put the firing system to aim frontwards over the roof of the cab. And they then put stabilizers at the rear, which go down to the ground and stabilize it. And they've managed to create a gimbaling system that's, or a targeting system that's incredibly accurate. They use the Grad rockets, and they actually sent, whether personally or they sent soldiers, they actually went in and stole some systems from Russian people to get this system working properly and to work out the engineering, what the engineering needs. But they're incredibly popular. We are committed to providing a certain number of these vehicles every month to this group because all the frontline units want them. And this is another thing, by giving to CAF Ukraine, that you support this initiative, which is really encouraging. The benefit of these things is they can go in really fast, set themselves up, fire off. There are either 3 rockets or 4 rockets on a car, and then they can exit really fast so that they don't get stuck being found where they are. And it's very accurate targeting. So fire away, Annette. Let's see him.
All right, let's cue that video. It's very cool.
За організацію збору та підготовку авто. Дякую спільнотам The Shills, а також ATP Geopolitics за підтримку у зборах і самому Діку та Джонатану за активну підтримку. Слава Україні!
Героям слава!
За рідну
You might
неньку!
want to turn the volume down.
Dick's running everything there.
Постріл!
They're quite
Hell yeah.
extraordinary because the car just sits there like a brick while these powerful rockets go off. The car barely rocks. It's really, they've done an amazing job. Anyway, we really love the Boom Boom truck. So support away and we'll get more.
All right.
It was actually, sorry.
Go ahead.
It was actually really funny when Halina and I were out in Kharkiv area. Like we went to Viper's guys and we met his commander and everything. But as we're there, like there's a truck there with like a gun with, you know, artillery launched on it, and it's like, oh no, that's air defense. And Halina, you guys don't know how short Halina is. Okay, she is like a head shorter than me, and I'm 5'5". Okay, so she's short. Okay, and she's petite and small. And there's these big artillery launches, and she's like, I want to go do that. Can I go do that? And she's always ready to walk up to them to be like, hey, can I also shoot out some stuff? And we're like, stop it. So yeah, you see them all around the front, like these things, but usually so it's really awesome that you guys do it because it's so needed.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, let's go to Dick. Is kind of going back and forth because he's got Felix outside and inside, but I want to go to some wrap ups here. If we could go to Rudy and you could give us a little summation about the demonstrations today.
Yeah, the protest that was in Phoenix, it was awesome, man. The energy was amazing. I'm not sure if the cops in town thought that there may have been something that was getting out of control, but there was cops on every corner. But like I said, the people were really into it. The energy was great, and I will be making a video about it probably later today. So if you just want to check out my channel, Rudy's Reaction, I'll be having a bunch of the footage from the protest, and yeah.
Awesome. They got the link dropped in there for your channel, so hopefully people will go over. Okay, let's go to Yana.
Yes.
Last thought for everybody.
Just continue what you all are doing. To the Americans in the chat and watching this and stuff, you guys, you know, well, I don't. It sounds condescending to say well done for stepping up. It's not supposed to come across that way, but it's just, you know, I'm glad you guys are standing up for your rights and what you believe in. And as someone who comes from a country that was captured by a few billionaires and we had it for like 8 years, hang in there. It will get better, but you have to stand together. And then also, with regards to Ukraine, thank you all so much for your support. It's awesome that we are able to get the guys the equipment they need to help them stay alive. So thank you.
And thank you for being here. It's been quite a while since you've been here, and happy to see you again. Claire.
Thank you for having me, Annette, and thank you for supporting CAF Ukraine, everybody. It's just one of many organizations that are providing vehicles, but the soldiers need them now more than ever, especially if they're going to be, you know, in some level of trouble for support. But keep fighting in America. You've got to get your democracy back. Really, we're missing you, and it's terrifying to watch what's happening to you. And keep fighting the soldiers. I believe in Ukraine. I think Ukraine's going to prevail. I think it's going to become a military powerhouse. I think it is. My new expression is to compare Ukraine to the Alamo. I think Ukraine is the Alamo. I think it's the last fortress. And I think if we don't all rally to Ukraine, then we can't prevail as a world of democratic nations. I think it is the last fortress. Let's rally to Ukraine.
Well said. Commander?
Using the Alamo as an analogy makes me nervous when you consider what happened at the end of the Alamo.
Yeah, well, that's what we don't want to happen, isn't it?
I know, that's why.
That's the choice.
Anyway,
that's the choice.
yeah, for the American audience and honestly, this extends to the global audience. Don't lose heart, even if we have the Orange God King making a mess of things. We still have technically democracy in this country, and hopefully we can use that to at least limit the damage he's done and oust him at some point. The second is my usual admonition to everybody here. Please continue to correspond with your elected officials. Let them know that Ukraine is very important to you and that you want to see American support for Ukraine resume.
Thank you. I just need a couple shouts, some thank yous, and then we'll have Slavie take us out. We donation from ATV and Ham, Ken, for $5 US. Doing what I can, Slavie Ukraini. Thank you, Ken. And Al Yorkie, 20 British pounds for the heroes at the front, Slavie Ukraini. I would like to thank our team. We have Shayna Caldwell on the Shills account. We have Mexigirl, who's been modding. We have let's see. I don't think we had Super Chat Matt in here today, but we had Leah Wakefield. We had a smaller team today, and you guys rocked it. Thank you so much. They're doing all this stuff in the background to help me out on this. And I see that we had some people in the chat that we normally don't have. Saw Viper, Blonde Bombsheller. And if I missed you, I'm sorry, but thank you so much for being here and supporting us. And Slavie, take us out.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Annette. I want to thank so much for everyone who joined us for today's Easter episode or Easter weekend episode of Ukraine Update with the Shills. To our amazing viewers, thank you for showing up, staying sharp, and standing strong for Ukraine, even while facing so much here in the US. Your support means more than words. You remind the world that solidarity doesn't stop at borders. So huge thanks to the mods, for the team in the background for holding it down in the chat. A special thank you to Steve Walsh for your incredible support in the chat. I see you. And yes, many of you have now access to super thanks and discovered Yarchenko channel memberships before I could even announce it. So just bear with me on that. Whether you show up to share, support, or just witness what's happening, thank you so much. This is how we keep the truth loud, justice visible, and Ukraine on the map where it belongs. So God bless America and Slava Ukraini.
Heroям слава.
Slava.
It's over. Go home. Go.
Herself.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
So yeah.
lots of
Thanks,
prep.
guys. It was awesome.
Yeah, today was a little bit chaotic, but we got through it.
You know, there was a lot of crap going on in chat, and I had it up to here, and before my eyeballs filled up with blood and rage, I had to just, you know, because we have a rule about not taking people out if they have an opinion, but man, they're sidelining the chat. You know, they're just not concentrating on our valuable guests and their stories and stuff you'll never hear. You know. So anyway, I get angry and then I want to advocate. All
No,
right.
but you handled that really well. You were like,
Oh, yeah.
I didn't sound like too much of a bitch.
No, no,
just-
I was like,
just
you're so
bitchy enough.
polite. No.
I know you guys haven't really seen that side of me too much, but I just get fed up.
That's how it needs to be. That's how it needs to be. That's the only way people will listen.
I'll have to ask the team if it actually helped because I wasn't watching too much. I was just kind of hoping it would fade away. But no, thank you guys. You made it really easy and have really helped Dick out a lot because Felix was when he said in the chat the trucks. You know, I don't know if you guys know too much about how much the internet goes out where he is. It used to be dealing with the road